everybody, and welcome to a new episode of the Awaken Together podcast. I'm Kat, and today I am joined by my friend Havanna Stegner. Hi, Havanna.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I'm so glad you're here. So I want to introduce you to everybody. Havanna is an Ayurvedic wellness educator. She's a yoga teacher, a ritualist, and the founder of Have Healing Arts. We're in Denver right now, but she is soon going to be moving to Portland. So if you're out in the Pacific Northwest, look out for her in a couple months.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, big moves coming. We met through Nurture, and you've just been such a joy to know. And you're such an old soul. Like, I am amazed. You have so much to give in such a young package. Like, it's always so inspiring and amazing to just witness you and your work.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm really excited to just have the ability to talk about what I do and why I love it and just connect with you over all things Ayurveda.
Awesome. Yeah. So today's going to be like a Ayurveda 2.0. So Jen and I, we are not super well-versed in Ayurveda like you are. And we did our best last time to kind of give a high-level overview of the doshas as it was taught to us. But today we're going to go a lot deeper because we have you as a gift here able to share that with us. So first, I always like to just start getting to know like you and your story. So how did you initially get drawn into Ayurveda?
Yeah, I think like most people who work with Ayurveda or find their kind of life's passion, it's like Ayurveda definitely found me. I was teaching yoga. I've been teaching yoga for quite a few years now, and I was in a place of feeling pretty good. Like, I've never had extreme health issues in my life, but I certainly didn't feel great. Like, I didn't feel like I was thriving physically, mentally, spiritually, all the things. And so I was looking for a way to just expand my knowledge and have something to learn and a tool. Not even really to give it to other people, but just out of curiosity of like, what is this thing? I've heard of it from yoga teacher training. Let me dive in. And then as I started to learn more about Ayurveda through, podcasts, books, all the things, and started implementing the teachings into my daily life, I was like, oh, I feel so much better. Surprise, surprise. And I didn't even fully realize what level of hormone imbalance and gut issues and brain fog and just like emotional instability I was having until I reached a place of balance that I was able to look back and just feel so grateful that I had found this medicine. So then once I had implemented the teachings into my life as best as I could with the knowledge that I had at that time, I decided I wanted to dive in a little bit more. And so I enrolled in the Shakti School. It's founded by Katie Silcox, and she does amazing work. She works with feminine form Ayurveda. So Ayurveda can be very dogmatic, very old school, where she applies a really awesome modern approach. And so I did her year-long program, and I graduated in January, and now I've since founded my own business, started working one-on-one with clients, as well as creating like herbal blends and spice blends and massage oils and all those good things.
So yummy. So exciting. I love to see this journey that you're on now. It's amazing. And so you mentioned before, like, you were coming from a place of not being in balance, and then by utilizing these practices, you found balance. What are some examples of things that you were experiencing before? And the reason I ask is because I'm wondering if our listeners might resonate with some of those things and be able to be like, okay, Ayurveda can help me with this.
Absolutely. So there's all ends of the spectrum of what we experience in terms of our health. What I was personally going through was just a lot of inflammation, a lot of gut issues and issues with digestion, as like physically, as well as being able to emotionally digest my own life. Hormone imbalance, which I know is something that you've talked about on the podcast before. A lot of skin issues that I was having that I've finally just got dialed in now. It's been a journey with that. And then just outside of the physical stuff, just purpose and dharma and understanding spirituality and my relationship with nature, that's been a huge part of Ayurveda. Because truly, Ayurveda is just asking the question of like, how can we be in better sync with nature?
I love that. That's what I love about Ayurveda. It's such a holistic approach, right?
Absolutely.
And that's obviously something I'm super passionate about as a holistic health coach as well, is we can't look at health as just food or just what we do. Like it's not just our emotional body, it's spiritual, it's nature, it's everything and. And so I'm wondering, what are some of the things that you help clients with when you work one-on-one with people?
Absolutely. So my main focus with a one-on-one clients is nutrition, for sure, and digestion. So we start by doing a really in-depth intake process. Like I ask all the very intimate questions for sure. And then from there, they take away just a few things to work on, and we build from there. And those few things include what spices to use, what spices to avoid, foods to eat, foods not to eat, as well as daily routine, ritual practices. And then most clients, we do a little bit of an herbal regimen. However, I prefer dialing in the relationship to food, how they're cooking it, how they're spicing it before bringing in herbs, because I think a lot of us look at herbal remedies the same way that Western medicine looks at prescriptions of like, I'm dealing with this problem, here's this herb, it's going to fix it, when really we want to get to the root cause. And herbs can do the same thing that prescriptions can do, where they work for a little while and then they stop working. Although they'll have less side effects than prescriptions, it's definitely a better route to start. Food, diet, ritual, routine. Then we move on to more like not extreme, but more aggressive remedies like herbs.
Yeah. Awesome. That's really, really cool to hear. And so when you mentioned like different herbs for different people and doing all of that intake, something that the way that I was taught Ayurveda is like, oh, what's your dosha? And so I'm curious how much of what the work that you do with people has to relate with a dosha, multiple doshas. Can you demystify that for us?
Absolutely. So tridoshic theory is truly everything in Ayurveda, which I love because it's the rule of threes. It's simple, and it also highlights our relationship with nature. So the three doshas, Pitta, Vata, and Kapha, are subcategories of the elements, essentially. So we take air, ether, earth, water, and fire, and we break those into the three doshas. So in the intake process, part of all the questions that I ask will give me a better idea of what dosha is highest in the system, or which doshas, because it can be multiple. And from there, we use that information to identify what changes need to happen. So if someone has really high fiery energy, so they have that really high pitta in their body, and that can look like numerous different things, we might find like cooling spices, cooling routines, cooling herbs to balance that out. So Ayurveda operates on the rule of opposites. And so it's always like increases like. And so if someone's really high in their fire, really high in their earth, or whatever element we're working with there, we want to heal that with the opposite instead of increasing it with the same.
That makes total sense.
Super simple.
Yeah, right? It's just taking that little like zoomed out approach and having a little bit of organization and structure to it to apply it. So for example, let's take me. Yes. I've learned that when I'm imbalanced, I'm more pitta. And when I'm out of balance, I go more towards vata. And I get like I'm anxiety prone, my thoughts will race, I get cold. So what would you recommend someone like I do in terms of diet and the things that you usually work with your clients on to bring me back to that balance?
Yeah, so with anything, we want to, I think the practice of Ayurveda is really the practice of study and paying attention. And so if you notice that when you're really high in your pitta or you're really out of balance, then you switch to vata. So if we look at the elements of fire and we look at the elements of air, sometimes the imbalance could happen because your pitta is so hot that it burns everything up, and then there's just air and space left. So there's that primary, secondary approach as well. So it could be that your fire blows out, either because you're burning too much or because you have something else coming that's taking the fire away. From there, if you go into your vata imbalance, you would want, which vata, the qualities of vata are going to be a lot of movement, a lot of anxiety, like you were saying, a lot of airy qualities. We want to ground those with more earth and water. So inviting in the opposite. And earth and water, kapha, is very grounding for pitta as well.
Yeah, one of my yoga teachers mentioned that like kapha is what we all want more of. It's like that mama energy,
more of.
Right? It's just like so held and loved and seen. And yeah, I definitely need more of that in my life. Like I just feel best when I'm like that.
Absolutely. I mean, most of us, if you just look at the high-paced society that we live in, most of us are pitted out because we're stuck in loops of reacting. We have to defend ourselves. We're in that fight. If we're talking about the nervous system, we're in fight a lot. Or we're vated out. We're anxious. We're driving from thing to thing to thing. We have a million things on our to-do list. We're overwhelmed. And we're in that kind of flighty space too. And so what we need is to ground both of those. And kapha definitely does have its downsides, right? So every dosha there's two sides of the coin, right? So too much kapha in the system can look like depression or lethargy, as well as more physical symptoms like slow, sluggish digestion, brain fog, all of that. So we want, really, the idea is that all three doshas, we have all three of them, and we want all three to work together so that they can support each other.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah. And one idea that I want to bring in based on what you were saying of, when I'm in balance, I'm higher in my pitta. When I'm out of balance, I'm higher in my vata. And so there's this idea in Ayurveda called prakriti and vikriti. And this is, I think, an important piece of the puzzle that we're missing when we just go online and do a dosha quiz, is we're not even viewing the holistic practice holistically. So we have to honor it by kind of looking at the whole picture of how Ayurveda does its diagnosis practice. But prakriti is your constitution, which is going to be the ratio of each dosha that you have, but at conception. And so there's a lot of things that go into play with that. It's the season that you were conceived in, the state of the health of your parents, even what they were eating the night they conceived you, literally every detail in that moment. So it's not birth, it's your constitution at conception when the sperm meets the egg, the very beginning moment.
Fascinating.
And so that's your baseline. And so for you, if you're saying like, when I'm in balance, I definitely have those good pitta qualities. That is an indication that you have more pitta in your prakriti. We still have all three in our prakriti. It's just whatever ratio. Then vikriti is the other side of that. And that's what you're going to find when you take those dosha quizzes, or when you have a conversation with a health specialist, is typically our imbalance or our current state. So that's going to be your higher vata in your constitution. It could be a vikriti, or it's just moment to moment. There could be, a month that you go through and you're like, wow, I'm experiencing a lot of kapha in my system. But that's just vikriti. It's ever changing day by day, even hours within the day. Your vikriti can change based on your environment, what you're eating, et cetera, et cetera.
Wow, that is so cool. I feel like that's really the missing piece to my understanding of Ayurveda. Yeah, thanks for painting that picture. I feel like I just get it better already now.
Yeah, it makes such a huge difference when we look at it. I see so many people talking about Ayurveda and having this level of attachment with their dosha. And so they take this quiz, and it's kind of like Enneagram or a personality thing. And you're like, I'm a pitta. And then you make your whole personality a pitta. And I say you, but I mean, I literally did that when I was starting Ayurveda, as I was so attached to, I'm very high pitta too, but I was really attached to my kaphic nature because I loved the fact that I was, at that point in my life, more grounding and stabilizing. And funny enough, like, my ex was really high in pitta. I left my pitta and became very kapha to balance him out. So it was really my vikriti, but that's just a side note.
No, that's cool.
I was really attached to this kaphic nature. And then when I went to school and when I did some self-study, I was like, wait, I am super Vata. Wait, I'm super Pitta. Wait, I'm so confused. What am I? And the answer to that question, what am I, wasn't I am this. It is that I have everything. So I want all of us and listeners included to, when we're looking at Ayurveda, to reframe our perspective and to look at it more of, I have high Pitta in my system, or I have high Vata in my system. This is my experience right now. I'm observing the experience rather than like, I am this and this is how I will always be and this is who I am. You
Yes, that whole I am versus I have is a very big difference, right? That's a big shift in the energy that you attach to or don't attach to it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because we need the doshas to work together to be in health in different ratios, in different ways for everybody. Bioindividuality is so important here. But everybody has all three.
Speaking my language with the bioindividuality. Love it. And so you mentioned before that you work with clients with like herbs and spices. And I feel like I have not even really brush the surface on what all of that entails. So could you share more about like some of the herbs, some of the spices that you usually work with people on, like even like meals? I don't know. Like it's just such a mystery and I just want to learn more because I love food, and getting creative in ways that support my health is something I'm all about.
Absolutely. And this is something with, like, I know with your integrative nutrition background, like, that is something that you can just take, okay, I have this awesome meal that I've created that's so intentional. Let me add these 3 spices on it to now make it digestible.
Yes.
And so that's the biggest thing with the spices, is that spices are medicine. They carry medicine. They're going to help mediate any imbalances that we're experiencing. They also help us digest our food. And so there's this rule in Ayurveda where all of our food, as much as possible, should be warm, cooked, moist, and spiced. And that helps us break down our food before it even enters our system. So then it's more bioavailable, and our body can break it down and we can actually access all the nutrients within it.
I love that. And it feels so natural. I mean, especially in this time of year, we're recording this like early spring, late winter. And I really still just find myself wanting warmth.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I know that there are some people out there like Jen, for example, who really identifies with Vata. She loves snacking. She loves cold foods, crunchy foods. What would you recommend for someone who that's kind of been their experience with food and spices, and like baby steps to how to get there and maybe change that habit?
Absolutely. I'm all about baby steps in my approach. So my biggest thing for everyone is to start their day with warm lemon water. Starting your day with something warm. If you're like, I'm out of lemons, that's okay. Just don't have the first thing you drink in the morning be cold. And so if someone like Jen, who's like, I want all the cold things, if she can just do that 1 glass of warm lemon water in the morning, that will create that trust within her system to invite in that warmth.
I love
so
that.
Starting with one thing, right? And then any adjustment that you can make. So if you're having like a cold smoothie in the morning, right? And a lot of people, especially in Colorado, we love our smoothies and we'll drink them all year round. And that's great. But maybe in the winter, you add a little bit of dried ginger into your smoothie. Ginger is a heating spice. So you take that cold smoothie and you just make it a little bit more accessible for your body without even heating it up.
Right.
And then eventually you might want to switch to like some warm oats because, smoothies all the time in the winter can definitely be hard on the body. But if you're hell-bent on your smoothies, then add a little ginger.
Oh, yes. And I feel like even thinking about this holistically, I feel like a lot of Vata people are cold, right? That's like one of those traits with it. And so if they're starting their day with something cold and wondering why the rest of the day they're cold, it's like, okay, well, I fully believe in how we start the day is kind of the energy and the intention that we're bringing into the day. And so if we're looking to bring some balance into that, like opposites, like what you're saying, that just like makes so much sense to me. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even with the more pitta types, like that cooked, warm, spice, moist rule applies to everybody. And so I actually had a client who was extremely high in pitta, and she drank ice water all the time. And it was like, she was literally like, I'm sweating all the time. I'm so hot all the time. Like, opposite of Vata, right? But she was drinking ice water because it was what was most comfortable for her to cool it down. And it was a process, right? And she slowly switched and did those baby steps just to not drink ice water anymore. And her body was able to regulate her temperature. Wow. And similar to, I just listened to your episode with Bridget, and you guys were talking about those little steps, little changes that you can do. It's the same thing here. Mm-hmm. And we're really playing the long game in Ayurveda. So if you can change those 3 little habits, right? That one habit, it's not going to turn around and be completely better the next day. You're playing the long game. So step by step, you'll notice those changes, and eventually you'll look back and be like, oh, I used to be sweaty all the time. And now I can regulate my temperature. It's pretty cool.
That's pretty dang cool. Pretty empowering. Like, I did that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and thinking about that too, the whole long play, it's something that I've been personally experiencing as I've been, for the past 3 months or so, I've been taking 2 different supplements each day, 8 pills total, 4 each. One is called myodechiroinositol, mouthful, and the other one is this balance protocol by Dr. Brighton, who's the author of Beyond the Pill. And so, amazing. Yeah, so I've been taking these for about 2 months now, and they say that when you're on your 3rd month, that's when you'll actually potentially start seeing benefit and change. And so that's something I'm really experiencing, is how with herbs and more natural things, like you're saying, not prescription drugs, it's just a longer process, but there's less side effects. You're doing something better for yourself derived from nature. You just kind of have to be patient.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, you're actually healing your body, and healing is a long process. I know our society values efficiency over longevity. And so we're looking for, when we do get sick, we don't want to have that, chicken soup and really soothe and rest and do the things that we really need. We want to pop like a Dayquil and go back to work. And we're just suppressing. And Ayurveda looks at the body in the same way that it does look at the emotional and spiritual wellness. It's all one. And so if we're suppressing our symptoms all the time, we're also going to be suppressing our emotions. And then eventually, most of us, especially people who have entered into this wellness realm, we hit our breaking point at some point where we're just like, I feel like shit and I don't want to do it this way anymore. Yeah. And I want to feel my feelings, and I want to know my body and be in sync with nature and do the things I need to do so that I can embody the idea of longevity and immunity and recovery when it comes to my health.
So good. So good. Yes. And thinking about hormones and hormone health, the journey I've been on.
Yes.
Still have a very irregular periods, been off the pill for 9 months now, and just really trusting that of the long game, and I'm here for it. Wanting to do all the right things for myself. What do you think about Ayurveda as it relates to hormone health? What are some of the tools and rituals that you understand can help this sort of thing?
Absolutely. So I'm lucky that my program was actually geared more towards women's health. So we did have a deep dive on hormones. And it's something that I'm very passionate about because I got off my hormonal birth control a year ago too. And luckily I've had a pretty smooth transition. But let me tell you, knowing your body, knowing what it's telling you, even my personality changing since that has happened, it's huge. So I totally feel for you being on this journey. It's a beautiful one. And
17 years crazy. Of it.
So it's a long time.
I'm gonna record an episode eventually called Gaslit by Birth Control, where I'm just gonna go into all of the things. But the whole personality changing, it's real.
It's super real. And so what Ayurveda says about hormonal health, I'll go into a few different things here, so and try to be concise as I can about them. But we have the 7 tissue layers of the body in Ayurveda. The reproductive organs, male and female, are the last of the tissue layers. And so we're talking about food. What's going to be nourished first is your rasa dhatu, which is your lymphatic system. What's going to be nourished last is the reproductive organs. And so if you eat an apple, right, it's going to take 35 days, approximately, for the nourishment from that apple to go from your lymph to your blood, to your muscle, to your fat, to your bone, down all the tissue layers into the reproductive system. And so with that in mind, it's really important that we are intentional about our nourishment throughout the month, because it does take time for those nutrients to reach our system. And so the same thing with detoxification, right? If it's so deep in the tissue layers, and we are on those hormonal birth controls, or we do have an IUD, it's going to take longer for that to detox out. So diet is huge. Liver health is also huge when it comes to hormones. And so the big issue with synthetic hormones is that we have too many hormones in our system. And some of them are ours and some of them are not. And our poor liver has to process all of it on top of all of the toxins that are in our air and in our water and in our food. So it's really taxing on the liver to be on hormonal birth control. And so doing things like Ayurvedic cleansing, Khichdi cleansing, as well as Love Your Liver protocol, which means getting good sleep, lowering alcohol intake, eating your leafy greens and your detoxifying foods, all of that can be really helpful in clearing out the excess hormones that are definitely in all of our systems, even if you're not on birth control, right? There's so many hormone disruptors in the air and in the water.
And then like shampoo and makeup, everything we touch.
Literally everything. It's so crazy. And so that's another thing is part of that. Loving your liver is truly loving your hormones. And so if you can, check for fragrance in your shampoos and everything, and check for those hormone disruptors like BPA and aluminum and all those things that can be really, really helpful to allowing your body to just give her a break.
Yeah.
So she doesn't have to process so much.
That makes me think about how something I learned recently is how when people are planning to have a child and it's like really in their control, how they should start, both the mom and the dad should start really focusing in on their health 3 months prior to conception.
Absolutely. So they say 3 to 6 months, and there's so much that goes into it.
Yeah.
And that's part of those tissue layers, right?
Yeah.
And so if we're like, I'm going to have a baby next week, so I'm going to do like a juice cleanse this week and then I'll be feeling good. Well, that juice cleanse has not even reached your reproductive tissues.
Right.
So that's why when we want to go into that whole endeavor of having a child, we really want to prepare every single tissue layer of the body. And conception with Ayurveda is fascinating, and kind of circling back to that idea of Prakriti, right? So Vasant Lad, who's written a lot of the literature around Ayurveda, reading his book, he was talking about Prakriti and Vikriti. And like I said before, it depends on literally what your parents are eating the night they conceive you. And so he's like, if the dad ate a lot of spicy food, then the baby might have a lot of pitta. So it's like down to every little thing, including like the seasons. And so that brings me into my next idea of how every dosha has a season. And this is part of tridoshic theory. And so right now we just entered Kapha season, which is the season of earth and water. So if you are trying to conceive, Kapha season is the season of like planting seeds and grounding and nurturing. And so Kapha season, that late winter to spring, is the best time to conceive.
Interesting. That's
cool?
fascinating. That's really cool. I'm learning so much. I had no idea about the 7 layers. That makes so much sense, especially with that fun fact that I just learned about the minimum 3 months. I have friends who they at Electric Forest last year, we were all together and they were talking about how they wanted to have a baby and how they probably wouldn't come to Electric Forest this year, 2023, because if all went well, they'd have a baby. And how they ideally would not start trying for at least 3 months after Electric Forest
To recover
from all of the drugs.
Yes. All of the fun things that go down. Totally.
Oh my God. Yeah. So funny, but it's just wild. And just thinking about that blueprint of what is happening in the world, the seasons, the parents' DNA, and how all of that is just like a little snapshot passed on to the child, and then it becomes who we are.
Absolutely.
We're all
It's
just
so
creatures
cool.
of
And
Earth.
so when we look at the body holistically and we look at the world holistically, it does show that every little detail matters. And that fact is not to cause any panic, right? It's actually supposed to be liberating of like every little choice I make, if I make it from an empowered and embodied place, can really serve the greater good for my body and my life and for the earth in this moment, but also in a year, also in a month, even if it's just like what I have for breakfast in the morning. Everything's connected and everything's in divine sync. And Ayurveda, that's why I love it so much, is because there's no segregation in how we look at the human experience as well as the body.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. I've learned so much today. So many tools to take away already. And I'm wondering how our listeners can connect with you.
Absolutely. So on Instagram, my handle is havehealingarts.co. My website's similar. It's havehealingarts.com. So you can reach out through either of those platforms. I also have workshops coming up where we do way more of a deep dive into tridoshic theory and how this can support your everyday living. So keep an eye out for those. That's a great way to connect. I also teach yoga at Nurture, so you can find me there up until I move to Portland in a couple of months.
Yay! Oh, well, thank you so much. This was so much fun. And we'll put all of your links and everything in the description for this podcast. But appreciate you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I hope you guys learned a little bit about Ayurveda, and there's so much more. So definitely check out my website. Also, I have a whole blog with all of these things on it, and I keep adding to it. So if you want to geek out, I'm your girl. Thank you so much, Kat.
Of course. We'll see y'all next time.